the river's oil-stained street of Port Harcourt, and the bright light of Madison Square Garden, one man carried Africa's rhythm onto the world stage and refused to bow. He called himself the African Giant, not as a boast, but as a statement, a reminder that Africa's voice, long ignored, could no longer be silenced. In less than a decade, Burna Boy turned his sound into a symbol, a fusion of rebellion, pride, and profit. He didn't just make hits, he built value, transforming Afrobeats from local rhythm to global currency. This is the story of a sound that became a movement, of culture turned into capital, and of the man who roared loud enough for the world to listen. Before the times of Grammys, before the global tours, before the world knew his name, there was Damini Ogulu, a restless boy from Port Harcourt, born in 1991, with fire in his chest and rhythm in his veins. His mother, Bose Ogulu, disciplined, multilingual, fierce, would later become his manager. His grandfather, Benson Idonije, had once managed Fela Kuti, the prophet of Afrobeat. From that lineage came music, intellect, and rebellion. But young Damini didn't fit neatly into anything. He wasn't made for quiet classrooms or the slow rhythm of rows. At 10, he was already tinkering with Fruity Loops, building beats from noise, turning chaos into sounds. In school, teachers called him distracted. He called it destiny. He left Nigeria to study in the UK, but the system felt suffocating, too polite, too boxed, too far from the pulse of home. So he made a decision that would define his life. He dropped out. Back in Lagos, Burna began sculpting a new sound, a cocktail of Fela's defiance, reggae's depth, dancehall's swagger, and hip-hop's great. He called it Afrofusion. A sound too bold for the mainstream, too wild for the radio, but perfect for a new generation tired of imitation. In a small studio lit by fluorescent bulbs, a rebel was inventing the rhythm that would make the world move. 2012, a new voice slipped into Nigeria's soundscape, smooth, rebellious, and impossible to ignore. It wasn't just music, it was attitude, swagger wrapped in melody. Like to Party was a statement, a sound that carried the energy of Fela, the cool of reggae, and the ambition of hip-hop. Lagos danced, Port Harcourt celebrated, Africa listened. By 2013, the debut album LIFE, Leaving an Impact for Eternity, dropped, with tracks like Run My Race and Tonight. Burna Boy became more than a rising act. He was a movement. Every song felt autobiographical. The hustle, the ego, the defiance, the need to be heard. It was the sound of a young man unafraid to dream on his own terms. Unlike most, Burna refused the comfort of big label chains. He founded Spaceship Entertainment, his own label, his own orbit, where he would be both artist and architect. He wasn't just chasing it anymore, he was building equity, turning art into ownership. From a Port Harcourt bedroom to Lagos airwaves, Burna Boy had found his fire, and the world was starting to feel the heat. By 2018, the world began to tilt towards Africa. The sound of Lagos nightlife, once underground, was now echoing through London, New York, and Paris. And at the center of it stood one man, Burna Boy. His album, Outside, cracked international charts, but African Giant, released in 2019, became a seismic shift. It wasn't just an album, it was a manifesto. Every track carried something deeper: pride, protest, pain. A sound that reached from Port Harcourt's grit to Brooklyn's skyline. Songs like Anybody, Bono, Dangote, they weren't just hits, they were anthems for a generation rediscovering its confidence. The world opened its doors. Coachella, the Grammys, global tours. Burna Boy was no longer local royalty. It was global currency. His face was on Nike billboards, his beats powered Spotify campaigns, and Afrobeats, once dismissed as a regional sound, was now $1 billion export. In less than a decade, Burna Boy had become both brand and bridge. The artist who proved that African rhythm could command global respect and global revenue. He didn't just call himself the African giant, he earned it. In 2021, Burna Boy made history. A Nigerian artist, raised on Fela's defiance and Port Harcourt's hustle, stood on the Grammy stage and the world finally listened. He became the first Nigerian solo artist to win a Grammy for Best Global Music Album with Twice as Tall. But this wasn't just a win for Burna Boy, it was vindication for every African sound that had ever been overlooked, mislabeled, or misunderstood. Behind that golden gramophone stood a modern empire, streaming algorithms spreading Afrofusion to every continent, luxury brands chasing the new African aesthetic, sold-out tours from London's O2 to Madison Square Garden. By 2023, Burna Boy's tours were pulling in tens of millions in revenue. Each performance was part concert, part cultural coronation. On stage, he wasn't just performing songs, he was projecting power, the kind that redefines a continent's place in global culture. From Port Harcourt to Paris, from Lagos to Los Angeles, Burna Boy had done what few ever could: turn African identity into global capital. He wasn't just an artist anymore. It was a valuation, $1 billion sound in human form. Behind the roar of the crowd, Burna Boy built something quieter and smarter, a business machine running beneath the music. His label, Spaceship Entertainment, evolved into Spaceship Collective, a fully independent structure handling everything: management, publishing, touring, and brand strategy. Every release became more than an album. It was an asset: streaming rights, merch lines, sync deals with Netflix, and FIFA soundtracks. Every beat carried a balance sheet. It turned art into architecture, an ecosystem where every note fed a new revenue stream. Partnerships followed: Nike, Apple Music, Spotify. Each deal leveraged Burna's image, African pride, global edge, uncompromising independence. He wasn't just endorsing brands, he was the brand, the face of a new kind of African entrepreneurship, where cultural capital became hard currency. By 2024, Burna Boy was worth tens of millions, but his real wealth wasn't in dollars, it was in ownership, masters, publishing, legacy. He had turned rebellion into revenue, rhythm into empire. Like every great businessman, he understood one truth: the sound might fade, but the ownership lasts forever. From Madison Square Garden to Paris Le Défense Arena, from Johannesburg to Tokyo, Burna Boy's name lights up marquees once reserved for pop icons and rock legends. He isn't just selling tickets, he's selling Africa, its rhythm, its pride, its pulse. In arenas filled with tens of thousands, 20,000, 40,000 voices, the sound of Afrofusion becomes a something larger than music. It becomes a passport, a statement of belonging for Africans everywhere. Each show, each lyric, each defiant performance is diplomacy in motion, not through embassies or treaties, but through drums, through dance, through the shared heartbeat of a continent. Burna Boy's message travels farther than any government campaign. Africa is not a story of struggle, it's the sound of strength. In a world once blind to African culture, it forced a reckoning, turning identity into influence and influence into global equity. His tours became more than concerts. They were declarations, cultural summits where every beat, every lyric said, "We are not just music, we are movement." From Port Harcourt to Paris, Burna Boy blurred the lines between artistry and advocacy. He became a new kind of ambassador, not of politics, but of pride. From Port Harcourt's dusty streets to Grammy Gold, Burna Boy's rise redefined what success looks like in African artists. It showed that you could stay authentic, stay independent, and still command global dollars. Today, Afrobeat streams exceed 10 billion annually. Nigeria's music industry contributes over $500 million to GDP and growing fast. And at the center of it all, a man who calls himself the African giant. He didn't just make music, he built a global empire. One beat, 1 billion streams at a time.